Sex trafficking is one of the fastest growing crimes in the world, and San Diego is considered a top destination for sexual predators. This month, an Oceanside couple was sentenced to prison for using an underage niece as a sex slave and pimping her out to other men. Aside from headlines of arrests and convictions, it's difficult to grasp how widespread a problem sex trafficking is in the region. The organization Project Concern International is working on coming up with some figures. Bianca Morales-Egan is with her group. She joins us now. Welcome to the program, Bianca.
Thank you.
District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis, in reference to the Oceanside case, said last week that it's a reminder that sex trafficking exists and that it's on the rise in San Diego County. What is your understanding of how prevalent it is in this region?
Unfortunately, we don't have all of the numbers yet. There are efforts going on right now to try and get a centralized database of those who are survivors or victims of sex trafficking. However, we know based on the prevalence in service provider organizations, those who are helping the victims and survivors of sex trafficking, that it is on the rise. They basically don't have enough space for those who are coming, not enough beds, not enough safe houses for those who are trying to get out of the life. So we know anecdotally and based on these key stakeholders that it is on the rise. However, we still need to work on quantifying the issue.
How young are some of these girls?
Oh, they've had girls as young as 12, 13 that have been recruited into what they call the life here in San Diego. And they're saying, when we're looking at education efforts, that high school may even be too late to start preventing this issue at the high school level, that really it's starting more in middle school.
One of the challenges in tracking sex trafficking is that these girls are constantly threatened and beaten by their pimps so that they won't go forward to authorities. And the men who are purchasing this sex are certainly not going to report what they're participating in. How are you going to go about tracking these numbers? How are you going to go about getting the evidence?
Well, there are estimates out there as far as the demand side of things, as far as the Johns. There are estimates that there's 10 to 20% of men have admitted to purchasing sex in their lives, and that's just those who are admitting it, as you say. And so we know that it's a large-scale problem, but also trying to quantify how it's going on here and looking at the issue will be difficult.
What are some of your preliminary findings about just the problem in general?
Preliminary findings that the most at-risk populations, the most vulnerable populations, are those who are falling prey to the traffickers, also known in the local sexual trade context as the pimps. We know that they sorry, I just lost my train. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry. You
do have some initial findings.
Yes.
And what do those show about the scope of the problem?
Yeah, the initial findings found the scope is large. There is, the problem from North County down to throughout San Diego County. As I was saying, that the service providers do find, that they don't have enough room for a lot of the victims and survivors, that people are reaching out to them, but they necessarily don't have the beds or the safe spaces. So, we know that as far as an issue, that it's larger than what we can handle right now.
Now, you're also taking a look at sex trafficking in neighboring Tijuana. How does the situation there compare to what you're seeing in San Diego County?
Well, we're just going to start that assessment. We haven't conducted it yet, but we will, suspect that we know that the problem is that there are brothels in Tijuana. We know that organized crime is involved as far as the trafficking, cartels, mafia. We know that the issue of young girls being solicited into this and forced and coerced into this is a large problem. So we know on the surface of what's going on, but want to look a little deeper at some of the root causes, where these girls are coming from, how it can be prevented.
And so the girls that are brought in by pimps into this business, very lucrative business, are some of society's most vulnerable, and they're as young as 11 and 12, as you mentioned. How do you even go about trying to stop this crime, considering that they are so vulnerable, they don't come forward to report? How does anyone reach them?
You know, it's a good question, because sometimes schools, reaching out to schools and having curriculum in schools, maybe even not reaching those who are part, you know, at the at-risk populations or part of it. So looking at, you know, the juvenile hall system, for instance, or looking at child social services, looking at those who are part of the system and knowing that, you know, they've suffered a childhood trauma, have been in foster care, knowing that those are the populations that are at most risk for being forced into sex trafficking, and really targeting those as a prevention group.
Bianca Morales-Egan, thanks for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me.